Will you do me a favor? Will you go in the kitchen, there's a refrigerator, open it up, and on the top shelf, there'll be a little bottle of water. And we'll share it.
Yeah, of course.
I am Lynn Cohen. I am an actress, a wife, a mother, a cuckoo bird, and a lover of pigs.
Lover of pigs?
Pigs.
Pigs.
And dogs and cats.
I'm Ronald Cohen, husband of Lynn Cohen, and I write stuff, and sometimes I act and direct and all that.
He's a great writer, great actor. Very modest. He's too modest. Shh. Well, I'm born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. Only child. A gorgeous mother who was gorgeous till the day she died, 95. She still wore heels like that. A father who was a poet dreamer. When I turned 10, my father gave me a dozen red roses and a copy of the Rubaiyat of Khayyam. And nobody could afford anything. I was very shy as a child. So I used to talk to people, like pretend I was somebody, pretend I was smoking cigarettes and having martinis. And so from a very early age, I wasn't calling it acting, but it's what I had to do. And then I met Ronnie, and he was perfect. Next.
What, is that it?
Yeah. I grew up, married you, got married, had a child. Perfect child.
Yeah. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. My father was a store manager. My mother was a homekeeper, whatever they call them. I had a younger brother, older sister, and a sister who predeceased, who died of diphtheria in the 1920s, which was very common back then. And then I grew up, and I was in the Air Force for 4 years, and then I joined Fairchild Publications and was a newspaper reporter and editor, while also directing and acting and meeting this lady. And then we moved around the country, and we finally wound up here in New York, New York.
Which was quite a while ago, 37, 38 years ago. We sent our kid away to college, and we left home. So there you go.
As we told him, we would leave once he left and try to find us. Well, and he did.
Yeah, for 2 days he didn't know where we were. We were in New York, but we didn't realize he didn't know where we were, but he found us. Eventually he found us. He's a wonderful young man. And we have 2 perfect grandchildren, and we had a perfect daughter-in-law. So we're very, very lucky. And I'm married to a genius. But aside from that, what else is new? Very vivid memories. We were having in Kansas City, Missouri, and yet another meeting with all the actors and artists in the area about how to do really quality theater here in the Midwest. And see, it's true. Quality theater in the Midwest, and we were all having this meeting, and then this guy walks in, with his raincoat over his shoulder, like Frank Sinatra. And I thought, give me a break. Who in the world is this? And it turned out to be him. And of course, he was late, like always, because he worked 24/7. And then we really met, mano a mano. I just come back from a small vacation. I got a call from the director that they were doing a play called, what was the play called?
I Have to Cough.
I Have to Cough was the name of the play. And, but the actress had left suddenly. It was going to open in 6 days. Would I come in and do the role? And it was a play that Tallulah Bankhead had done on Broadway. So I had all the lines. And I walked in, and there was the director, and Ron was the assistant director. And then by the next day, the director had left to go do something, another job or another play. But I think it just scared him to death. We were going to open in 5 days. So it was just Ron was directing. And he was the bossiest, most genius person I ever met in my whole life. And he still is. He's a genius. He has the mind. He's brilliant. He has a wicked sense of humor. If he were here, I would talk about him. But, you know, that's how we met.
Actually, this all happened before the thing she describes. We were both cast in a production of Rashomon. This was the stage version of the very famous Japanese movie, Rashomon. And we had our first meet and greet meeting with the cast. And this lady walks in with her whole entourage. I believe it was her mother, her aunt, her cousin, I don't know who, but a whole bunch of people trailing her in. And so I saw them, and I thought, wow, she must be a star here in Kansas City. And so that happened, and we did a reading, I think, or we just talked. We didn't even do anything about the play.
No.
But then the next rehearsal, she was gone. She had left the production because, as she said, she was afraid the director was trying to hit on her.
I wasn't afraid, he was.
Well,
okay.
You were still afraid.
Oh, I was afraid, that's true.
And then we met later on. But that's my first memory of her.
Well, I mean, professionally, when I was 15, Kansas City, Missouri, I was 14 going on 15, and I had wanted to go to summer stock. That's all I wanted to do. And my parents were very wonderful because I was very young, and I had arranged to go to the summer stock in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which was very far away from Kansas City, Missouri. And they said, all right, if that's what you want, that's what you can do, and we trust you. It got toward the time I was supposed to leave, and they got cold feet, and they said, I don't know what kind of company this is. They called the New York Times. They called the New York Times and asked to talk to Brooks Atkinson. Brooks Atkinson was the major theater critic in the entire country. Very, very famous. And he got on the phone, if you can believe it. And she said, our daughter's 14, going on 15. She's very mature. She wants to go away to this company. We need to know, is it safe? And he said, yes, it's a good company. And it's all right, she'll be safe. So I went away, and when you go to a stock company and you're that age, you scrub the floors, you wash the clothes, you do the dishes, but every once in a while you get to walk on the stage. And the first thing I remember is a play called Smiling Through, an Irish play. And I think I played the ghost of the woman who was the lead in the play. And I was in heaven. I wanted to act, and there I was. And I never stopped from that moment on. And when I do a play, and someone is in charge of costumes or doing something backstage, I have an enormous respect for them because I know what all that means. And I think everybody should have that in their life who wants to act. They need to know what happens there. Someone is pressing your clothes, someone is hanging the lights, someone is, you get the point. So yeah, that's how I started. And we together have acted and separately in every venue, you know, in farmhouses and great theaters and film, whatever. But it's something that we have to do, both of us.
Ron?
Oh, well, I don't know. I think in high school, I appeared in Sheridan's restoration comedy, The Rivals.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was restoration.
Yes.
And there was different periods there. And I played Bob Akers, and I was wonderful. And then later on, I don't remember exactly all this, but I did appear in a production of He Who Gets Slapped.
Wow.
Which is a European play about a clown who falls in love with a pretty bareback rider. And I played the heartthrob of the circus, the trapeze artist Bassanio, I believe his name was Bassanio, I can't remember exactly.
And you had to wear tights.
I had to wear tights, so of course I was,
I'm
again, magnificent.
Yeah, and I wasn't there to see him in tights. It's terrible, but I made up for it. I didn't have an acting coach, but I did. I went to Northwestern, and I probably had the greatest acting teacher at the time. Her name was Alvina Krauss. And so much of Chicago theater now, Steppenwolf, a lot of those people there were either students of Alvina or students of hers. She took no nonsense, and if you didn't want to act more than anything in the world, she wanted no part of you. But she was a genius. And then I've had wonderful, wonderful people since. Michael Howard and Ron Van Loo. We're still in class all the time, both of us. We were just in Ron Van Loo's class within the last couple of weeks. And a kind of interesting thing, because we were going to Tennessee Williams, but we were to pick somebody from the opposite sex. Like, we did Glass Menagerie, and he did Amanda, and I did Tom, which I really think is the only role that I'm right for in Glass Menagerie. But we both work in class all the time, and I always still feel like I'm just beginning. And everybody you meet, if you're lucky enough to meet terrific people, are part of what you do. We've taken a Shakespeare class, we're in something called the Actors Center, mostly with actors who've been acting for 20, 30 years and more, but still have the desire to be in class, to learn, to take chances, to do things you're not right for. The world thinks you're not right for, but you feel you are. Yes?
All right.
Okay.
What, me?
Yes.
Oh. Well, I didn't have an acting coach, but I attended an organization called the Actors Studio of Chicago, which was started by a young fellow who said he had been with the Actors Studio in New York and had come to Chicago to set up a branch. So we all took him at his word, and we went to classes with him, and they were very good, and we did a lot of work, and that was a long time ago.
Well, also, when we were here, since I've come to New York, I've been involved with constantly new readings.
Howard was
yes, Michael. I did mention Michael.
You did mention him. Okay.
Yes, of course I did.
Of course.
And but we do readings of plays all the time. I'm going to do 2 next week. At a wonderful organization called New Dramatist, where the very first time I ever read John Shanley, who was a very big playwright. I was reading a play of his a week because they have to hear it. And a new dramatist is about the playwright being able to work on his work and having committed actors really be involved with the work. So we're very fortunate in that we know such a glorious community of actors, directors, teachers. A great voice and speech teacher, Patsy Rodenberg. It's ongoing with us. We're constantly in class. Yes?
Yes, of course, anything you say.
Oh no, anything
true.
I say. Oh, ho, ho, ho.
all true.
All right, right. What would you like for breakfast? Anything you say. No. It gets harder. Absolutely harder. When I was 15, I had no problem with doing Medea or St. Joan dedicating her armor or whatever. But the more you know, I'm talking about myself, the more you know, the less you know, the more difficult it becomes. No, it costs to be, it costs. It takes over your life, and you realize how much more there is to know, to do. It's just harder. It's harder the more you know.
That's the beauty.
Yeah, that's my opinion. So, next.
Well, it gets harder just simply physically. Age begins to creep in, and suddenly you're finding that you can't do everything you did when you were younger, so that becomes a problem. Like even the endurance of being in a play for 2.5 hours can begin to feel more like work than fun. And so that's a problem, but there are certainly many old actors, and they're all on stage and all competing for roles just like they did when they were young, so all that remains. So you have that double thing. But just the emotional toll, and what I don't think that gets any harder. There's always nerves before going on. That doesn't really go away for anybody, I don't think. You are putting yourself out there in front of a lot of people, trying to remember lines, hoping they're just there automatically. People all have their little routines they do before going on to make sure that they don't, fail out there or whatever. But it's easier than digging ditches and working at Walmart. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, nothing is secure these days.
No, that's the truth.
The business, in terms of right before, after, now, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you've been around for a long time, what would be the biggest difference between what's going on now in terms of getting casted in a play or in a film compared to 30 years ago?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I personally, it doesn't really change in some crazy way. 2005, I think, I did a film with Steven Spielberg, Munich. A great film, a great director, and I've worked with great directors. And it was major. And I think I auditioned for something 2 weeks later that involved 2 lines and didn't get it. So I personally think that it's always the same. And I don't think you can ever take anything for granted. Some people do. I do not. I am now at the point where there's a quality of a human being, an artist that I want to work with, directors that I want to be with, other actors. I don't think I really have always felt you're never any better than the people you work with. I feel that way. And if you're lucky enough to work with wonderful people, you have half a chance of being okay. But I feel that more every day. And there's more at stake every day. The expectations of other people of what you do. I loved walking in when they expect nothing of me. That was easier. But when they expect you to do something wonderful, it's harder. And you have to say, I need the freedom to make mistakes. And you look at the really great actors in this world and they put themselves in jeopardy. And that seems to me where real artistry is.
Me. Well, I mean, I know that the business has changed. I mean, what you call the business, I don't know. It's a very many-channeled business. I mean, there's film acting, stage acting, doing commercials, doing television, radio. And I never, luckily, had to depend on my livelihood because I had my day job, which was quite consuming. So I only can talk as an observer on a lot of this. But of course, the business has changed dramatically. I mean, like now, we can sit here and get a call to go make an independent film for $30 a day or something. Whereas in the old days, people who did films were all out in LA, under contract to studios. They had regular jobs, regular salaries, and they didn't have to make their own work. They were told what to do. And they got paid a lot of money for doing it and lived very comfortably, although they worked hard, sometimes 6 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. But they became stars. Or they became just, supporting players on the employment role at the studio. Or they worked here in New York and they would do a stage play on Broadway and then do radio and make money somehow, And nowadays you sort of have to scramble for everything. Broadway has a certain coterie of people they use over and over again when they do a straight play or a musical. The universities are turning out people who want to be actors like droves. I mean, it's ridiculous. You open up American Theater Magazine and every college across the country is offering an MBA or something, or an MFA, not MBA, they should be offering MFAs to become theater people. Where are they possibly going to work? There's just an oversupply, and these people are talented, there's no denying it, and they all have the desire, but it seems to me there are more people now wanting to appear on stage or make a movie than there are people who want to go see them. So you have that kind of imbalance, but you also have all this content being done on television. Any night now, if you have all these subscriptions to Amazon, Netflix, HBO, Showtime, Stars, there's a million things going on with people you never heard of, and you don't know where they're coming from. And it's just changed in that way. The dynamic has changed like every other business nowadays, like department stores, where have they gone? Everybody's shopping online. Things are just changing, and this business is changing dramatically, like every business.
Well, there's one thing that I don't feel is true, because I have taught actors who were not children either. They were 21, 22 years old, and I've done small classes with them. And I'll tell you a situation. I asked, of these 12 people, where would you like to see yourself in 5 years? Of the 12, 11 said a sitcom or an action film. And I said, theater, and they said, no. One person of that 12 said, I'd like to be in the theater doing a play. So the field is very different, and the aspirations are very different. And I also think they feel that if they get that sitcom, or if they get that big role in the, that then they can do anything. So it wasn't easy before, and it's certainly not easy easier now. You have to want to do it. It's like anything. Whether you want to be a doctor or an artist or a great musician, it's a passion. And you have to hear a lot of no's. You don't have to, but you do. But you have to wake up in the morning. I've been very fortunate because I live with somebody who understands it and is a part of it. And not everybody has that kind of support.
What's also a little maybe scary or frightening is that people going into the business today seem to have no idea of the culture or history of it.
Oh.
We were traveling just in Florida on a promotional tour for an independent film, and the publicist, who was with a very well-known marketing firm for films, didn't seem to know anything beyond
2000. No, 2000.
And
2000.
Even current people. She didn't know the name Vanessa Redgrave, didn't register with her. She didn't know who she was. She didn't know who Frank Sinatra was, and I was thrilled to hear that. But anybody else I mentioned, she didn't know who they were. Nobody.
And very big people that she never heard of. In theater, film, even television.
And yet she was a publicist promoting a film, and a very nice young woman.
And very bright.
But all that seemed, anybody who worked before she was 10 years old seemed to be nothing about them whatsoever. I mean, and colleges used to teach something about the history of film, or the history of the stage. You got some idea of the artistry or the culture you were trying to keep going, to maintain.
Right.
But nowadays that doesn't seem to matter at all. It's only what's new and contemporary, and because everything's on computer anyway.
But I also think people,
eventually there'll be no actors. So there'll only be computer.
Also, people don't tour like they used to. I saw the Luntz, Alfred Lynn Fontaine.
You know who the Luntz were?
No, of course they don't. People don't know who they are. They don't know who Duza was. They don't know who Sarah Bernhardt was. And they don't know Vanessa Redgrave, for God's sake. Which you do, because you do.
Ask you.
Yes.
We have a lot to cover, and I'm sure that we done
Okay.
everything. Your instrument. How do you describe your instrument as an actor? What kind of instrument?
Like
do you
every
have?
instrument, it has to be kept in shape. You have to work on it every day. And it's something I do think about. And I do work with great people for that. Patsy Rodenberg is one. There's nobody, and she is the top of the lot. But I mean, it's something, this is all I have. Physically, mentally, I haven't had time recently, but I was in a class that did do trapeze and Roman rings and gymnastics. It's very important. Physically, vocally, and this is all you got. So you work on it. And you have to keep it in shape. I'm using you keep it in shape finger.
That's how she keeps in shape.
Keep it in shape by using this finger.
That's right. I'm like Donald Trump.
Go ahead.
Keep in shape by
No, don't go there.
No,
That's not
He
good.
keeps in shape by doing gestures.
No.
That's my regimen.
No, don't.
We have, when I was younger, you did physical theater, and we were with a group in St. Louis by a couple named the Nichols, who had done a lot of physical theater in New York.
Alan.
And they took their studies for some
Joanne.
reason or other to St. Louis, and we worked with them in a lot of children's theater where we ran around gymnasiums.
Stood on our head.
Stood on our head, did shoulder stands. I could never do a cartwheel, but I did a lot of somersaults.
Right. That's genetic, a cartwheel.
So
you either can do it.
that was the kind of thing I did do. Now it's all kind of happenstance, If I can walk across the stage, I'm happy.
Until you have to run across the stage. And then you can do it if you have to do it. I'm using the finger like that. If you have to do it, you do it. I think number one, the word method. Everybody has a method, whether it's, you know, I was reared on Stanislavski, which is very simple. Which every other kind of method, whether it's at Sandy Meisner, whatever, Strasberg, it's the same thing. Who are you? What do you want? How do you go about getting it? And I use it all the time. It keeps you very open. Everyone I've worked with, and I'm talking about Shakespeare as well, someone like Rob Clare, who's a wonderful Shakespeare person. Whether it's Beckett you're working on, or Albee, or Shakespeare, it for me all breaks down. Who am I? Where am I? What do I want? What do I do to go about getting it? It's that simple. And that is basic Stanislavski. And it's the way I think, and it's the way I create a role. And
you became a member of the Actors Studio, Lynn?
I'm a member of Actors Studio,
yes.
Yes, I've been for years and years and years and years. And like everything else, sometimes it's wonderful, sometimes it's not wonderful. Mm-hmm. But it is a place where if you can go to make a mistake, mm-hmm. to be wrong. You've got to have that, as far as I'm concerned. You can't hold on to being right all the time. There's no such thing. It's an art form. And, you know, Picasso, all those guys, they broke rules. And, you know, next.
Yeah. Well, I'll supplement what she said by saying, at least in the American theater, in the American way of acting, there are two different kinds of methods, I think. I don't know if that's what you meant. There is the Strasberg method, which was to use your own emotional
sense memory,
content and history to find things in yourself that you would then use in playing your character. And then there's the, what's her name?
Which one?
The other great teacher.
A female?
Yes.
The other great female? Oh, you mean Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
No.
The one who was in there.
Hagen.
Aduda
Hagen. She has her own
Stella
school.
Adler.
Stella Adler.
Oh, Stella Adler.
Which is totally opposite. Which is to study the play, find out everything about the history that the play takes place in, everything you can about the character, and then bring that into yourself and make it true for yourself. Well, those are completely opposite ways. They both wind up with actors who give great performances. Although Brando started at the Actors Studio, then moved over to Stella Adler. He always claimed Stella Adler was his teacher, not Strasberg, although he was at the Actors Studio. You know, he gives great performances, and they look very methody because everything seems to be coming out of this guy named Brando. And yet he liked to transform himself. He liked to play an English sailor and a Japanese whatever, and what's that one called?
Tea House of the August Moon.
So he liked to do that. And he was using the Adler method. Whereas if you see Streetcar Named Desire, it looks like here's this guy Brando using every ounce of emotion within himself to play that role. So, and when I as a member of the very famous Actors Studio of Chicago, which I say with irony because I don't know how famous it was, if it was famous at all, we did the Strasberg method. When we always worked on a Tennessee Williams play called The Lady of Larkspur Lotion, in which I played a poet who comes in to see this woman being tormented by her landlady, and I have to save her with my emotional response to the situation.
Sort of biographical.
So you'd always sit backstage and think of, how you used to cry and, oh my God, all the terrible things that happened to you in life, so that when you come out, you would be ready to do it, dredging up everything in your life that can make you cry and emotional, which I don't know that you have to do. The wonderful story, which I'm sure we've all heard, when Laurence Olivier and Dustin Hoffman were making the
Marathon Man.
The Marathon Man. Dustin Hoffman, who played a guy who would run every morning for miles, did that every morning, came to the set exhausted. Olivier looked at him and said, "Dear man, why don't you try acting?"
Listen, the two techniques that he mentioned, whether it's Sandy, Matt Meisner, or Strasberg, or they really all had that base in Stanislavski, and it all started with something called the group theater that they both were a part of, and that was based heavily on the Stanislavski method. And Stella Adler went over actually to meet with Stanislavski.
Yes, and that's when she came back saying everything Strasberg said was wrong.
Right.
Right. Because they said that even, I used to have a Russian acting coach. She said that the translations are not quite accurate.
That's true.
That there's a lot of stuff that we're getting that is not exactly what he said, what he wrote. And Stella Adler was one of those people who said, "Oh, wait a minute, and she got her own take on acting. But
in the long run, it's whatever works for you.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about movies. We talked
Okay.
about Spielberg. Lynn, give us a little breakdown of the man, the experience, what it meant to you to be on set and to be directed by this master.
He was amazing. And he loves doing film. I'm going to tell you one quick story. And we had a big costume fitting. I was told that Spielberg never really meets, everything was done on tape for me, that he never meets any actor face to face until they're on the set to do it. And I was in LA and I was in the big fat suit and everything. And the AD, assistant director, comes in and says, "Oh, good, come on. We'll take you to Steven and you can meet him." I said, "Steven?" He said, "Yes, Spielberg." And I said, "But no, look what I look like." And he said, no, that's the point. So we go up, this is in LA, we go to his bungalow, whatever that is, and we're walking upstairs, and the first thing I see on the wall is a sled. And I said, "Is that Rosebud?" Which is, of course, from Citizen Kane, and he says yes, and I said, "Oh my God." So we go up and we're standing there, and then he goes in another room and Steven Spielberg comes out, and he's wearing cut-offs, and he was the most accessible, amazing person. And he loves film, I think from the time he was a kid. And we looked pictures of Golda Meir, and we looked at one where she was actually reviewing the troops, but she had her handbag, like my grandmother. My grandmother never went anywhere without her handbag, because you never know when the Cossacks are going to come either, but you always had your handbag. And then after a while, his assistant came out, and it was about the time that, what was the Tom Cruise, and what was the name of the film that Tom...
War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds. And he had been on Oprah Winfrey's show and stood on the chair and did some cuckoo
Jumping on the set.
Jumping on the set,
How much you
okay.
love Katie Holmes.
And so after we've been talking for a while, his assistant comes out and he says, "Stephen, we got to go back now into your office. The press is here, and TC." And I thought they said E.T. is here. I thought, oh, okay. So that's what we're going to do. E.T.'s in the other room and the press. But of course they said TC for Tom Cruise. That's my what experience with him. He was wonderful on the set. There was one place where he actually had the cameraman get off so he could shoot the scene himself. I've never seen that happen. But I mean, I've worked with wonderful, wonderful directors, Louis Malle and Woody Allen and Tom McCarthy. I mean, it just goes on and on. Nicole Hollis Center. I've been very fortunate because I've worked with directors also that want something to do with the actor. Not all movie directors do. A lot of movie directors really don't feel that they can talk to actors, and they put coaches with them, an in-between person. And it's much better if you and the director have a real relationship. I've been very fortunate.
Was it scary for you, obviously, working with somebody like him? Everybody knows who he is. Everybody in the business and in the world knows who Spielberg is.
Yes.
Was it stressful for you? Obviously, you have to be in character, be in the moment, and do your job. But it was kind of like somehow stressful or scary a little bit when. How did you work with that?
He did everything in the world
to make it easy.
Yes. For instance, there's a scene when I'm talking to.
Cabinet.
Yeah, the whole. Yeah.
Scene.
And there's Stephen right now.
Yeah.
Right.
There he is.
He's calling. Oh, dear God.
Yes.
Well, like I was saying, I've had the opportunity to work with wonderful, wonderful directors. Not only Spielberg, but Woody Allen, Tom McCarthy.
You should tell her about Spielberg and the Israeli actor when they changed a word in the script and he couldn't say it, remember?
Oh, wow. Tony Kushner was on the set all the time when we did Munich, which is amazing, amazing, because you never see a writer on that. Never a word there was no imprint, never, it was what Tony wrote. And there were enormous, I was the only American, I think, in the film. They were South African and English and an enormous amount of Israelis. And he wanted to change a word of dialogue. And he told Spielberg that Tony did. And Tony said, okay, we're going to change this, and this is the line you'll say now. And it was an Israeli that had that. And English was not his first language. And he was having a terrible time just learning that one new sentence. And Stephen said, take your time. I could never do it myself. Yeah, no, he was that kind of...
We have plenty of film.
We have plenty of film. He did say that, you remember that? Ronnie was sitting right next to him, the Spielberg, the whole time with headsets on. But he did say that. I have all the film in the world, take your time. I could never say that myself. I could, and that's what kind of a human being he is, period. So.
On your observation about him, about Steven Spielberg?
Well, she says he has the demeanor of the regular guy. You know, there's nothing arty about him or remote, or he'll tell you about, you know, the things he really loves to do when he's not working is driving his kids to school in the morning. And that's just the way he is, you know, nothing pretentious about him. He just has a knack to do something with that camera that a lot of directors don't have, to pull you into a story visually, which I think is his big genius to do that. And another thing is that he kept telling Lynn he wanted her to be deeper. And she thought he was saying emotionally, but he just wanted her voice a little deeper to sound more like, more authoritarian when she spoke as Golda Meir.
Right.
And so she did, and she gave what I think is a wonderful performance. And we always say, the movie was first being previewed, for some reason they showed her scene in the beginning, her big scene where she's talking to her cabinet about things the civilization must do. They must sometimes compromise their morals to do what they have to do. And there was all kinds of talk about, oh, this is an Oscar performance. But then that's all that she really did in the movie. She only had 2 scenes, or 3 scenes.
3 scenes.
If he had one was so little it hardly counted. That scene in the picture over there. But we always said if he had given her the final scene that the guy talks about, that Jeffrey Rush talks about, where she refuses to meet the Eric Bana character. If we had seen that, she might have been up for an Oscar, like Judi Dench won one for Shakespeare in Love for 3 minutes on film.
So
You know,
they always say, you need that one more scene and then you would have been nominated for
It was, I mean.
it was it was wonderful to work
You're
with.
always wonderful in anything
Oh.
anything you do.
No. Well, we also have to mention Michael Patrick King, who wrote, directed.
no, she'll ask about Sex and the
Oh,
City.
okay. Oh, okay.
It being her
Okay.
favorite.
I
Okay.
wanted to, Woody Allen, the
Okay.
years. Woody Allen, the man, the genius.
A
and now
genius.
the
He is a genius. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it whatsoever. When I went into audition for him, and then there was a callback, that was when the audition for him, the casting director said, he'll probably just meet you. He probably will not have you read, because he doesn't do that. He'll just meet you, and then you'll say goodbye. Don't say anything at all. Just say hello. So I walked in, and I think I put my hand out to shake his hand, something really crazy like that. And then I turned around to leave, and he said, no, would you mind reading? And I said, no, that's great. And he read with me. And many times you have to wait. The next morning, they cast me. He said, you've got the role. And shall I go into what happened after that?
Please.
Later in the day, they lost their leading lady because there was a divorce thing happening. And I
Wasn't
thought,
a divorce, they were never
or
married.
they were never married.
It was
Yeah. And
a
he-
little more complicated.
a little more complicated. And I thought, no, I finally got my role with Woody Allen, and now the film's going to be no. But Diane Keaton stepped in, and it was very fortunate. She was wonderful to work with. And I loved working with Woody Allen so much that I would come home every day and say to Ronnie, they're going to fire me. I am having such a good time. I understood everything he said. And sometimes it was obscure, but we were on the same wavelength. And he's a genius. There's no doubt about it. And I absolutely loved doing that film. It was Manhattan Murder Mystery. And somebody said, well, did you know that you were the one that was going to be murdered? You only get your sides with him, right? Only yours, so you don't know what the... And I said, well, no, because I was the one who was being murdered, and you don't really know that. But he was wonderful to work with. I loved it. It was, orgasmic. It was so terrific.
Does he give a lot of notes? A lot of notes? Does he like to give a lot of notes, or he lets the actor?
No. In fact, he said to me when I first walked in, you don't have to do my lines exactly as I've written them. I, however, knew what were the funny ones, and those should be the same. And he loved improvising. There were things that we did that were improvised, that he kept 90% of what I improvised. And I love both. I love doing very scripted pieces, and I love improvising. So I was very fortunate. A lot of wonderful actors do not like to improvise. It's another way to go. And there are some genius actors who do not like to improvise at all. They like to be very tight. So, and I love both. So.
Ron, your impression about Woody Allen?
Well, I didn't have any actual interaction with him at all, so
But
I think
what do you think of
he
him?
turns out movies like clockwork, and some are wonderful, some aren't so wonderful, but they're all worth seeing if you have the time, because he always has something interesting in them. He always gets great casts. They're usually beautifully photographed, and how he does it, he has his own little world that he works in, and people who support him, and he manages to get actors to work at minimum salaries.
Really?
Every name when he calls, I guess they come, and I always try to see whatever he puts out.
Sex and the City, Lynn. Tell us about the whole casting process. when you got considered to be Magda and Cynthia Nixon and all the girls. And
I
all the
know,
guys and
all the
fun.
babes, I know. I was the only one that really, my dresses were not, well, they were bought at like Sears and Roebuck. In any case, Michael Patrick King, we both had worked with. I first met him because he was an actor, a terrific actor, doing, I was doing Hedda Gabler in Dobbs Ferry, New York, in a girls' school. And Michael was part of the company doing another play. I think it was As You Like It. And Harriet Harris, who's also a wonderful actress, was also doing Hedda Gabler. But that's where I first met him. Then when he went, it was actually Sex and the City. They'd asked me to do another role, and I couldn't because I was out of town doing a play. And then they had this role, Magda. And I went in and I got the job, and it was only supposed to be one episode, but the character took off. And Michael wrote a lot of them, directed a lot of them, and produced it. He is an amazing man. He's an artist in every sense of the word. Can I tell you just one quick story?
Please do. We bring it on. We bring it on.
The last script, the last show that was ever filmed
On TV.
on TV, not the films. I got my part of the script, and everything was X'd out. Everything. I just had a few lines in it, and one of them was, I'd seen her wash her mother-in-law in the bathtub, and the mother-in-law had Alzheimer's. Ann Mira, wonderful Ann Mira. And her mother had Alzheimer's in this story. And I see that earlier in the episode. And the last script that I had of it, I just have a couple of lines. And the last line I say to her is, "What you did, that was love. Now you've loved." In other words, you found out how to love somebody. And I called Michael and I said, where's the joke? I mean, that's all that is. And he says, there is no joke. I said, but what? All of it. And then he said, you have to kiss her. And I said, oh, I can't kiss her. He said, yes, you have to kiss her. And I kissed her on the top of her head. That small scene took more than a couple of hours. And I said, Michael, there's nothing funny. He said, no, but he said, but this is what everything's about. That's what this whole series is about, those lines. What you did, that with love. You love. And people today stop me on the street and say that, and tell me that line and say they cry every time they hear it. Young 15-year-olds, 90-year-olds. So I guess he knew what he was talking about.
They remember her first scene and her last scene. The first episode she was in and the last one.
It's the first one I find that. It's fine then.
Replaces the vibrator with a little statue of the Virgin Mary. And everybody remembers that.
Yes.
And they'll tell her about that, how wonderful that was. And then other people will remember that last scene and how effective.
And sometimes it's both.
How was the experience?
It was an experience. It was very, very, very fortunate.
Fun.
Oh, yes,
Fun.
yes,
A lot of
yes.
improvisation
And
too?
those babes were so smart.
The girls.
Ronnie also did a Sex and the City, an episode. Yes, I said you also. Yes.
Very minuscule. You have to keep your eyes open to find me. I was on the board of Miranda's co-op, and she was trying to get her a man she thought could be her boyfriend into the building. He happened to be an African American, so there was some discussion about it, and a lot of the board members wanted to make sure they didn't play the race card. And Michael did not direct that, but he did come in and say, give him a close-up.
I love that. It's nice, it's beautiful, it should be done, right?
Yes, you got it.
It should be done.
You got it.
Jane Alexander, switching gears. with the wonderful, great, superb actor Jane Alexander.
I could work with her for the rest of my life. It was, being on stage with her was like being in a rocking chair. I mean, it was that easy. And I was very lucky that, and this was Tina Howe, her play. I don't remember, what's the play called?
Chasing Manet.
Chasing Manet. It's a wonderful play, but the best part of it was to work with Jane. And it was two old ladies who were breaking the rules of how you should live and what you need to do with your life. And I tell you, working with her was a piece of gold. It was a gift. A gift to do. Because Jane Alexander really is something. Generous, smart, sense of humor. God, you want a sense of humor with everybody you work. If somebody don't have a sense of humor, you're a dead goose or a cooked goose or something, one of those things. But she's a very amazing actress and generous beyond belief. Smart, sense of humor. And, you know, I'm like all of us, a little insane. We go a lot. Ronnie reviews for theater, so he can see up to 3, sometimes more, a week. And I go with him whenever I'm available. And it's live theater is very important, but you know, the audience of live theater now is mostly over 50 years old, maybe over 60. So I remember one time we were in the theater and there were 2 very young people in front of us and they were talking the whole time while somebody was up there, and Ronnie finally, and he's never this way, but he did. He finally tapped him on the shoulder and said, you know, if you can hear them talk, they can hear you. They were not used to being with live people. And so we have to get that generation back.
How do we get it back, Ron?
I don't know.
I don't know. You have to give them stories they're interested in, get the prices down. That's one great inhibiting thing.
Yes, that's
Even
exactly.
for older people, you know, $135, $150 for one person to go see.
Do you remember your thought, Ron? Where were we? Oh yeah,
Huh?
the insanity about prices and how
Right.
tough it is for the people to go to the theater. Insane.
I'm sure Lynn will tell you, you know, when you could get standing room for $2.50 or something.
I saw everything.
And you still can get standing room occasionally, but it costs like $40 or something. And, you know, it's just too much money for people to put out. But apparently if you have a hit like Hamilton, it doesn't make any difference. So I don't really
It does
know.
make a difference.
Well, I mean, they will pay prices for that.
I mean, people.
But a lot of people, and they do give you your lottery, so you can get a $10 ticket if you're there at, you know, I don't know what time you have to show up to get those, but so that somehow they do try to make it more democratic and for the people.
But live theater is,
Prices.
yeah, very has a hard time.
Well, but it's an elite experience in a way when you have so many stories being told in so many different ways that, you know, you can sit home and watch some of the greatest
Television.
performances ever given.
That's right.
And you have your choice of seeing them, you know.
Right.
There's great content on television that's just made for television
yeah.
now. I think people like Woody Allen are making television series, so, you know, it's almost too much good stuff. I don't know how you answer that question.
And too much junk too.
You betcha.
But there always was a lot of junk.
A lot of junk. It's
When you
crazy.
think of what Hollywood used to turn out when they were, you know, they had to fill these millions of theaters across the United States, for 7 days a week, there were a lot of just B movies, Z movies being turned out like a factory.
But there was something like Citizen Kane that was made for not $100 gajillion
Of course,
million
what
dollars.
I'm saying is, there's always been a lot of junk, and there's always been the masterpiece.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff in between. That's not a masterpiece, that's not junk,
Right.
and just worth seeing if you have the time and the money.
Well,
And
live,
nowadays, if you have the money enough to buy a television set, you can see a lot of it for something like free.
live theater, however, is a very different
It's a very
experience.
different experience.
Right.
When was the last time that you were touched, when you went together to the theater, you guys go off and you were touched deeply in every level, sensorily, emotionally, mentally? You went to see a production that you took literally your breath away.
I don't know. I mean, as far as musicals, it's got to be American in Paris was amazing. But I'm trying to think, what would you say, Ron?
Well, American in Paris, you loved a lot.
I know, but we're talking about and plays. When would be the last play we'd seen that just took our breath away, that you didn't move? I think John Shanley. And I think,
Prodigal Son,
yeah, but Outside Mullingar,
oh, Outside Mullingar.
yeah, it was just amazing. But I'm trying to. That was one thing I really just sat there. But I've had this year too. I'm trying to think what. There's been a couple of experiences like that where you just sat there when you were. I don't know. Can you think of something? I love it that we're really, really looking.
Well, I think, just for pure enjoyment, the revival of She Loves Me that Roundabout Theater
Oh, that I
did,
didn't see.
was just, I see a lot of musicals because I write for Musical Theater Review, which is a London-based website which covers musical theater internationally. And so I thought that was just a totally beautiful, it was a classy show.
Right.
And a classy musical is something that's really
Right.
hard to find sometimes.
Richard III was amazing. The one that you did with Twelfth Night. Remember?
Oh, yeah, with Mark
Rylance.
Rylance.
Yeah, Richard
was
III.
quite wonderful.
It's what you can do with theater when you can take real leaps, chances. To be wrong, oh God. I mean, nobody really wants to be wrong, but you have got to have the freedom and the courage to walk through doors that maybe somebody says you can't walk through.
And another show on Broadway was Eclipsed, about the women in,
Yeah, that was amazing.
is that in Nigeria or wherever they are? But these women in Africa who are
Were kidnapped.
actually the slaves of
Yes.
the chief. So-called their wives, but they're really just slaves to his sexual needs.
Right.
Was a totally enthralling play. It just took you into that culture and that country and the horrible things that are going on so completely that you forgot yourself.
Right.
And that was a wonderful experience, Eclipsed.
Right. So was Color Purple, the recent one. The
Yeah.
audience was so vocal, and so it had been by John Doyle, who directed, and it had been stripped bare. So it was just about the people and the situation, and it was devastating. And it was devastating because I was sitting next to people that were getting up and shouting, "Don't let him do that to you! Tell him!" I mean, it was an amazing experience. That's what theater should be.
Right, when you get to
Well, you know,
involved.
we're back in the old days when.
Well, musicals these days seem to be out to pack more of an emotional punch than straight plays. A lot of straight plays they're doing now are so minimal that they don't really make any great impression at all.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is to, of course, put them on as economically as possible. So you get stripped down sets, you get 2 or 3 actors, and they talk in ambiguous terms to one another, and you really lose any big emotional punch. Whereas a musical tries to give you that now, and they put all the resources
good
of
ones.
theater into it. It's but a lot of plays, I don't know what they're particularly aiming for. I mean, you feel like they all begin to meld into one another. They all seem to be telling the same sort of story about two strangers coming together and finding each other.
Right.
That seems to be the plot.
But there are wonderful theaters too. The public
Of course,
theater, the public theater still does.
Look, I have it written
Yeah,
right here.
yeah, yeah.
Public,
Yeah,
you have to see
when
what the
they do
public
a classic, it's, you know.
And other things too. They've done very important work at the public.
Yeah, but a lot of plays are still, they're all takeoffs in one way or another on Edward Albee's Zoo Story, which two guys coming together, meeting each other, and it all ends in some sort of either violence or reconciliation. And, you know, there's only so many ways you can tell that story.
I don't know.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying everything is like that,
no,
but I'm saying a lot of it is.
We saw the premiere of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Oh, rubber man.
Okay? Half the audience didn't know what to make of it. They thought it was too long. There were words they didn't like, angel tits and monkey nipples, that they'd never, that's the right words I used, right?
What about the one with Tracy Letts?
Yes. But it's, we saw it with Uta Hagen, and it was devastating. And we actually got to meet Albee afterwards, and he was young and very, very shy. And, but half the audience didn't like it. But it was something that never heard before. I remember the very first time I saw the Zoo Story, and I saw the Cherry Lane, I mean, I couldn't breathe. And again, and also I saw Beckett, who also, you know, I got to do Happy Days. And it's so relevant, it's all still so relevant about what women, and what people are trapped in the world. And the great ones are always relevant. Waiting for Godot is relevant.
Masterpiece.
And Odette's is still relevant, you know. It's all there. The great ones still, Arthur Miller still can just devastate you. So, because they're talking about life things that never seem to go away. Yes?
Edward
Right.
Albee, yeah, I'm talking
Oh,
about.
yeah,
What do you
yeah,
take
yeah.
on Edward Albee? Losing him.
Albee said I knew, and as I say, when they first saw it, they half didn't know what to make of it. And it's true to this day, and it's true today with like Beckett. It's true today with Shakespeare. So, you know, keep on trucking and just get in there every day and punch.
On Edward Albee from.
Edward Albee, well, he wrote a lot of plays, and he certainly believed in playwriting, and he turned out some masterpieces. I mean, as I say, Zoo Story really set the template for a lot of plays that have followed. I could call them park bench plays, but I mean, that really started, and Virginia Woolf, in its way, also created a template for a lot of plays that are written today. And he could, some of his underappreciated plays, I thought, speaking of plays that left me kind of breathless, was the one that they did at Signature. Oh,
Sandbox?
with huh?
Not the Sandbox.
No, the lady from Dubuque.
Okay. Yes.
It's a wonderful, wonderful play
Right.
about the about death.
Right.
And
And Jane was in
the
that too, Jane
desolation of
Alexander, yeah.
cancer. And it's so hard hitting and emotionally imaginative as to the chords that it strikes. I mean, he just was a fearless writer, and he wanted to go. Obviously, he was influenced by Beckett, as he admits. Some of his plays take on that feeling. But he was a genius of the American theater.
I felt-
playwriting. One of the, we've had some just wonderful, wonderful playwrights that somehow the British always seem to maybe admire more than we do, like Arthur Miller. From Eugene O'Neill, Arthur Miller, Edward Albee.
Odette.
No, Odette's, not exactly in the same.
Well, yeah.
Arthur
Pantheon,
Miller,
but-
Tennessee Williams.
Tennessee Williams, of course,
And, he's the
who
top.
set the bar.
He's considered to be the best American playwright. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't think there is a best.
There's
No.
no such a thing, right?
No, I think he certainly was the most prolific.
And for what he had to say, I certainly think that that makes him very great. But they all had something very strong to say. I actually fell in love with Ronnie when I saw him do Jerry in the Zoo Story. I just, that character to me was it. And I did. That's when I really fell for you hard.
Wow.
Wow, that's a confession.
It's time you knew
You're a
that.
little cocky now, Ron. It's time for you to brag it out.
Or drag it out in the,
Yeah,
out in the
get out of
open.
your system.
Drag it out and do it again.
Right,
Watch it again.
yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I really now, and he's going to I'm going to drive him crazy saying it. Because I've had the opportunity, if there's a role that I have something to say with, that touches me in some way, and I can explore and open up, I'm not interested whether it's a male or a female or the age. I really think right now I probably understand Juliet more than I did when I was that age. I understand what it is to love so deeply that you would kill yourself because of, I understand all that. And I don't think I would understood it when I was 15 or 16 or 17.
Well, when you're 15, you don't know what death is either. It looks easy. You don't know, Oh, yeah, well, I'll kill myself. It's okay. I'll be back tomorrow.
But there are...
You don't believe in death.
I don't believe anymore in age or sex.
I love it. We're almost done. The Hunger Games, switching gears quickly, the experience, Hunger Games.
It was
that's
wonderful.
huge.
First of all, I have to tell you one quick
Please,
thing.
bring it on.
We went for the costume fitting, and Ronnie, of course, was with me. Sitting there as I was trying costumes, I went in and I said, well, where's my costume? Because I was doing the oldest lady, the old lady who's like 90-something or 80-something, 80s, I guess. And she said, there. And I said, those are wetsuits. And he said, yeah, you're going to wear a wetsuit. I said, I'm going to wear a wetsuit? And yeah, that's what everybody's wearing. I thought, oh no, and I've lived this long, I've avoided wearing a wetsuit, now I have to wear a wetsuit. But I did. It was wonderful people. And I got to work with all the young, beautiful people. So they took such great care of me. And they were so disrespectful. It was just wonderful. Oh no, let that coconut hit her on the head. Put her over there, And it's, I was part of the gang. And it was those three beautiful young people, wonderful actors.
Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence and Josh and Sam Claflin, whose back I was on a lot, up and down mountains. And he was a wonderful actor and very gorgeous. And I kept saying, no, Sam, it's too hard, you can put me down now. And he said, no, Lynn, I promise you, I will never drop you. And I said, I'm not afraid of being dropped, I don't care. And, but I also, they let me do stuff because I was strong enough to do it, and I really, I wanted to climb when I had to climb or do it. They were very wonderful, and they took great care of me. But also, I wanted to show that a woman was strong until the day she sacrificed herself by going up into the,
Into the poison gas.
into the poison gas. So.
When you get a call from your agent, when oh, listen, I got this project going on, how is the Lynn Cohen? Because you've been around, you have so much between you two, experience and knowledge and wisdom. How does it work when you get a call, say, oh, I'm going to make this movie, I'm going to make this play, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that? Do you get overexcited? Do you get nervous? Do you cry on the phone? Give us a little
All of the
Lynn
above.
Cohen.
All of the above. No, it's not really. It isn't. It's because at the end of the day, I go and I wash the dishes and I cook the meal, and I'm married to the most wonderful person in the world. And
Who's that?
oh yeah, I keep forgetting. Olivier, no, that's not who it was. It was somebody. Any case, no, and it's never any easier. And I'm telling you, in this profession, there would be no more calls. You have to constantly. I'm going to do 2 readings next week. No, 2 readings this week, and then we just got back Saturday night.
On a promotional tour.
A promotional
for
tour.
A film
yeah.
called
The
Pickle Recipe.
The Pickle Recipe, right.
Look for it.
He's so bad. He's really bad.
No, it's
but I don't like to promote it.
It's actually coming out. It's an independent film
true.
that's going to play in a theater.
That's true.
What about Frank's independent film with the son?
Oh, yeah,
kid?
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that too. Before we go, we have
Okay.
minutes.
Which independent film are you talking?
The one that you would, with Frank Solorzenov from Barefoot Theatre Company, that you work with the son. Please, because I saw the pictures on Facebook.
Did you see
I
that?
haven't seen it yet, no.
Nobody's seen it.
Nobody, except the editor.
It is an amazing thing, because it's about an old woman who's an actress, and she's in a retirement home or whatever, an old age home, and everybody's sitting around like this, and she gets the idea that they're going to do Shakespeare, and they're going to do a Shakespearean composite. But the thing that gives her that idea is this extraordinary young child who the world calls autistic. To me, I think maybe they're just too brilliant for this world. And I got to work with this child for 5 hours straight. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, because she was authentic. They don't suffer fools. They know they go right past here and right to here. This amazing child, and who wanders accidentally into this nursing home or retirement, old age home, and gives me the idea that I'm going to get all these people who are just sitting like this, each one to do a different Shakespearean monologue. And I get to do the St. Crispin Crispian Day speech in it, which is Henry V. And it's actually the first thing I ever saw of Shakespeare that Laurence Olivier did on film, and changed my life. But it is an amazing film. And what's it called, Ronnie? As constant as...
I don't know what it's called.
I think it's constant as the Morning Star.
Constant as the Northern Star.
Northern Star.
That's the line that I have.
That's Frank
It's from
Solizano.
Julius Caesar.
Yes.
Caesar says he is unchanging, constant as the Northern Star.
I do hope it gets viewed, because it's an amazing story, and something that Frank had to do.
Talented guy.
Yeah, and this extraordinary child is the center of it. So we're very lucky, and that we get to do something like that. So
To wrap it up, what do you have to say to actors, people out there who love the craft? Because there's a lot of people who get into this business for, obviously, fame and fortune, IMDb credits, but it seems like acting is not much more of a sacred calling.
yes.
It seems like everybody needs money. All of us, we need money. It's nice to get the bills paid. It's nice to get a big check. But there's a tendency, based on what I see, you correct me if I'm mistaken, there's 2 tendencies. One, actors who love the craft.
Probably nothing. There are those who want it for the money or the fame or whatever, and that's great. It's not the easiest road. And if you have to do it, you just do it. It's a calling. And we're very blessed. We are very blessed. I was very blessed in living with a human being who understands it and loves it like I do, and wants me to pursue it. And I was he was also supporting me when I was doing things that were not making any money. And he's a great artist himself. But you know, like everything else, if it's something you have to do in life, you're lucky enough to do it, then it's a blessing. From him up there. And Ronnie?
My advice, if there's anything else you can do or have any inclination to do, you should do it.
She's right.
Because this, although no career is easy these days, but if you're looking to get fame and fortune, you've got a tough, you could be very lucky and it could happen to you. But as we said earlier, the business is changing so dramatically, you don't know where it's going to be next year. So I wouldn't depend on this. It's really, these kids go into these schools and spend, all this big money and get these degrees in acting, and they don't mean anything. It's different if you get a degree in computer technology. People look at that, oh, you can do that, But you can walk into an audition room and there can be a cop who likes to act on the side, and because he's perfect for the role, he'll get cast over you who may have spent, 6 years going to school to learn how to say a line with truth. And if there's anything else you can do, you should do it.
That's the truth.
If you have any inclination to be a doctor, a lawyer, an Indian chief, or a fireman.
Fireman is good.
Fireman is a great career these days.
And,
if you're looking for money, obviously finance is the place to go. Nowadays you can even get some fame because all these guys on Wall Street are becoming celebrities as well. You're interviewed on TV. They've got all these TV channels, these business channels, where you'll become a big consultant because you've done nothing, Or you become a political consultant, even better yet. You don't have to know what you're talking about.
Or you don't have to be anything, just, quirky or not quirky.
But there's so much happening in medicine these days. You should really consider that, kids.
Plastic surgery. Plastic surgery.
That's artificial.
Plastic surgery is a very big field.
Very good field.
It's a really good field.
Better yet is to go into research or go into general practice where you can make people feel good, or you
there you're back to plastic.
Your life finding another version of penicillin.
That's plastic surgery.
Just find the cure to cancer.
That levels the field. That levels the field.
Or multiple sclerosis.
Listen, it's a blessing from whoever you believe in life to be able to do what you want to do and live with the human being you want to live with. Come on.
Or become a great veterinarian. There are so many things you can do.
To close it up, because we have to go, and this is so good. Let's close it with a sacred memory. Sacred memory.
Sacred?
Sacred. When you gave birth.
You go first.
Sacred.
But something that.
Let Ronnie go first on this one.
Sacred memory in your life. Something that touches you deeply, that you go back on a daily basis or weekly basis when you think about it, maybe at night. There's just secret moments that we have that we go back, like a recurring image or moment in your life that changes your life.
Should have asked me, you given me that question earlier, I could have thought about it. I'm just grateful for my life. I'm grateful for having this woman to help make it so wonderful. So I wouldn't, any particular moment? Well, I remember her, I was in Paris, she had been in Romania doing a play, and
When
I
Ceausescu
had spent
was
the
there.
day, it was Bastille Day in Paris, and I spent the day trying to find a grocery that was open where I could buy her a grapefruit, because I figured that's what she would probably want, because I'm sure they didn't have any grapefruits in Romania. They have nothing but potatoes and onions. And so then I did find one, and then I went to the airport, and seeing her and then having the grapefruit for her, I think is something I remember, very gratefully and wonderfully. And, it was Bastille Day and fireworks were going off, so it was all very dramatic.
And for me, There's no greater memory than having dinner with him last night. Or
Last night?
yes, last night, or the night before, or breakfast this morning.
Last night we were so exhausted from this trip.
And you
To
were thinking,
Florida.
what the hell, we're gonna.
We ordered in.
with
We
that
ordered
crazy
in.
woman Talking for an hour.
So I had a salad and chicken wings.
But listen, I always set the table. It always looks beautiful. If we're sitting with nothing, that's a precious time to me, and always has been. There's nothing more glorious. I'm really sincere about that.
Oh, I know you are. What
Smiling
else?
like that.
Okay.
Smiling.
It's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth.